Well, hello, everyone. This is LeiLani Cauthen, the CEO and publisher at Learning Counsel News Media and Research, also a proud EduJedi Grandmaster. Just completed with the analysts the review of the 2021 big national surveys. There was one this year for teachers and one for administrators, and remarkably, they didn't answer the same on the same questions. So a lot to talk about there. I won't get into it this time, but we're here to talk about today reducing teacher workload, which is huge. And I'm going to show you some data on that because we really want to get to the point where we're talking about strategies for strengthening digital curriculum, because that underpinning for teachers is a huge time saver for them. And I know we're all going to have many things to say about that, but let me show you a little bit of data and thank my good friend Lemma. Gale sponsored this particular event. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Lemma, in just a second to have you do a whole intro, would you please? So let me give you some data. This is just to frame up this conversation with our illustrious panelists today, who I'm going to also introduce in a second. But our January study, and this really hasn't changed from completing the 2021 analysis for the big surveys, said 74% of teachers are overwhelmed or burnt out. Now, because we're still riding the roller coaster of COVID, not COVID, mask, not mask, all that other stuff, in or out, or some students are gone, blah, blah, blah. This is not over, right? This is still what's happening out there, feeling overwhelmed or burnt out. And then you have this other thing happening of teachers overly sidetracked into repetitive distribution and collection of assignments, resources, or communications. So 40% say they're sidetracked into that. 60% say they're sort of managing that, but 40% is high. And then the last thing I want to share, and then, like I said, turn over to Lemma to do an intro here, is the number of hours. And this is straight off the 2021 new data. How much time they spend just doing back and forth traffic of assignments, logins, which content you're supposed to go to, student and parent emails, systems monitoring, checking out notifications, anything that's more administration and distribution than actually teaching students. So, this is big. If you have 30% of all teachers saying they're spending 10 plus hours a week on that, I don't know if they can sleep at night. Like where do they find that time? That is huge. Lemma, I know you have an intro that we really want to hear from you. So I'm going to have you just sort of launch into that and then welcome everyone to meet Kristin Dages. Did I say that right, Kristin?
Yeah, Dages, like Vegas.
Media technology coordinator.
I like that.
Vegas, yeah.
Thanks.
Who's the media technology coordinator from Hudson City School District in Ohio. And then Dr. Penny Christensen, who's the e-learning specialist from Hull County Schools in Georgia. Great to have all of you guys. So we're going to get into some questions here. But Lemma, let's do that intro now as to tell us what's new and what's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me. I'm Lemma Shomali. I'm the Senior Director of Product at Gale, a part of Cengage Learning for our domestic learning business, which supports K-12 libraries and classrooms, public libraries, and state libraries. Kristin, I love that you say Dages like Vegas, because I often say it's Emma with an L on the front for my name, so Lemma. So I love that you had a little Vegas reference in there. That's awesome. I have been with Gale for nearly 20 years, the last 10 of which I have focused almost exclusively on developing digital products and services for K-12 classrooms and libraries. If you're not familiar with Gale, we have been in the publishing and information industry for over 60 years. Back in the day, if you had a library need, if you had a country report or a person report you had to do for school, you probably went into your library, you pulled that encyclopedia off the shelf, you looked up William Shakespeare and you found his biography and all this information about what he wrote and what people said about it. Gale probably produced about half of that stuff. And over the years, as technology has expanded and education has shifted, we too have shifted to continue developing more and more digital solutions, not only in support of library and research, but more expressively in support of the K-12 classroom. And LeiLani, I love that you have refreshed statistics, because supporting the teachers who are in the classroom day to day, who are trying to carve out that precious time to actually educate, has been something that Gale's been working studiously on for the last for several years, but expressly in the last 2 years, we recently developed Gale in Context for Educators, which is a teacher platform that overlays over all of Gale's K-12 digital resources to provide pedagogical support and curation and customization capacity for teachers to use in the classroom, or for any educator to use across a school or a district. So teaching occurs in the classroom predominantly, but we all know that we have opportunities to educate outside the classroom as well. What is so special about For Educators, and I won't say too much now because then I'll talk too much and not give enough time to my wonderful colleagues here, Kristin and Penny, is that it's got a lot of everything for everyone. And so it really is not one more solution. It is a solution, the one solution that can be really impactful for solving some of those problem statistics that you showed. And I'm really excited to dig into that, to share some of the things that we've uncovered as we've been rolling this product out to schools across the country and across districts, share some of the best practices we've heard from folks like Kristin, who have been actively using it in their district, as well as, you know, what we've heard from other folks, teachers, students, et cetera, who are using our solutions. But again, I want to welcome everyone who's joined us today. Your time is extraordinarily precious. We hope that you will get a lot of great nuggets out of today, come away refreshed, and come away with the knowledge that there are a lot of folks out there, industries like mine, that are looking to support teachers and have them navigate this especially challenging time in K-12 education. So with that, I think I'm supposed to turn it over to Penny, Kristin, who wants to go first?
Yeah, I think what we want to do is we want to launch into like a question. So let's give you guys this question about the whole thing. So actually, maybe first, before I give you the zinger, do you want to just comment on everything we've already said so far? Kristin, you want to go first, and then I'll call on Penny.
I mean, I'm not shocked to see the statistics that you just referenced. You know, I see that every day, and I feel like combating the teacher burnout is super important. And I think that, you know, hopefully throughout this conversation, we'll touch on the teacher training and the professional development that can kind of ease a lot of the challenges that teachers do have in making sure that they feel supported. But I just, you know, it is so important to be thoughtful about the curation of digital curriculum, because I've been in education, you know what, I think this is my 15th year, and these resources have come so far. I think it's incredible to see how they have listened to educators, those needs throughout the years, and being able to thoughtfully find these resources that can reduce the teacher workload and make their lives easier, but elevate, you know, the learning in the classroom has been awesome to be a part of, awesome to see, and gives me you know, a lot of hope in the future for those statistics to take a turn.
Totally agree with that. All right, Penny, what are your thoughts on just that initial thing, and then I'll lob the big question first, the first one at you.
Well, when you shared those slides, the first one that really resonated with me was the sidetracked. They feel sidetracked. They took a step forward and they took 3 back. And I think that runs the gamut. You could say for almost any teachers had that experience in the last however many 20 months we're on here, because they might have a poverty of abundance. Maybe they have so many of these digital assets to pick from that they're constantly evaluating and they get paralyzed. But also maybe they have to create stuff. And we know that K-12 is different than higher ed. We do not come with instructional design skill sets out of college typically. So that really spoke to just everything I've observed and felt over the last how many months.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to Kristin and then Penny and then Lemma. I would like you to also comment in that. So here's the first thing or question is that we really hear that the bigger problem is the teacher training and PD. It's been in many instances like a little bit of a drive-by and not in depth. And the surveys are showing that the number 1 and 2 things were people were trained on Zoom or some webinar function, or they got device training, but the rest was teacher training. And so you've got like maybe 100 apps you don't really understand. So what's your opinion and what are your thoughts about what really needs to be addressed for teachers? And Kristin, you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is definitely that there can be that mindset, especially when teachers are overwhelmed that, oh, this is just another PD that I'm not really going to be able to use. So, you know, I feel like the power of PD lies in collaboration, honestly. We've got to make it worth their time in providing them with, you know, what they always say they have so little of. And it's that time to curate resources and create. And maybe not necessarily even, you know, create from scratch, but look at what they're already doing and look at how they can strengthen it. And I think that making sure that that time to curate and create is in collaboration with their PLC or, you know, their department, depending on the building. I think that's super, super important. And it allows them to kind of build a digital community among themselves. They are able to feed off one another and it doesn't all fall on their shoulders. They're working with each other. And I think that's the type of teacher training that they get a lot out of. It also has to be ongoing. I don't think it can be that one and done thing, especially anytime we are thinking of whether it's devices or just digital content in general. You know, it's always changing. The platforms are always changing, right? A lot of times they're getting better, they're improving. Student needs are changing, and so I feel like there does need to be that constant touching base and that ongoing professional development, understanding too, and making sure that the teachers in your district understand that they're not on an island. They should feel supported and know who to go to for that daily support. So like I work across the board with our curriculum coordinators, but also our library media specialists throughout the district who are the go-tos in the buildings, and making sure that there is somebody that can provide that daily support with the curation and the you know, the strengthening of this digital curriculum and these digital resources, so that they don't feel alone. And, you know, anytime we can get teacher input in the planning, there's always way more buy-in, right? And there's always more engagement, which is what we want with our professional development.
Yeah. You know, you said something so important there. And I think it's a major undervalued portion of this digital transition. And that is, they're not alone. But, you know, we come from so many years of running schools where the teacher goes in the room and closes the door, and there's really not a lot of cross collaboration. There's maybe even almost a little jealousy, like that teacher over there is getting more attention, you know. It's like it almost created a little of a, you know, competition more than collaboration, just to be honest, right? So now what you're saying is that, you know, really, if we're really going to have value, we're doing this all together. We're seeing each other as, you know, helpful collaborators. Maybe sixth grade math here and sixth grade math there are really doing a lot of stuff together. I've had a lot of superintendents say this to us in the past year, and I think it's a really big theme that you just touched on. So thank you for doing that, because it is a new age, and coming out of your I'm just myself alone is a gift in so many ways, but it's also new, you know, it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
right,
there was early on. Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kristin, and then I'll have.
I was just gonna say that, you know, early on with our technology department and our our library department, we initially thought like, this COVID happens, right? This is what we've been training for, right? I mean, we have these digital resources, we can support these teachers and make sure that they feel supported. And I think that's just really, really important throughout the teacher training and the planning of that teacher training. So.
Yeah, huge part of the shift that we don't really see or value as much as we should. All right, Penny, what are your thoughts on the same stuff?
Well, I've got to tell you, Kristin, I really felt when you said time, like time is what changed and it wasn't in proportion to how it changed for teachers. Teachers, of course, were overwhelmed and didn't have enough time. And what we found is sometimes our time had to shift. So it might have been when we inserted, or it might have been for how long we inserted. And so my two big ideas out of pandemic is we have to get closer to on demand for a lot of our training and or PL. And we might not reach there in every item. I don't have every item on demand, but how quickly can I get that to people? And then micro learning as a big idea has been with me for a while, but can I tell you that I've really identified just content micro learning. And now I've shifted to, well, it's a micro audience. Nowadays, when I'm in a district of about 3,000 teachers, if I get a after school session of 14 teachers, that's a good session. Well, that would not have been true in 19 or 18 or 17. And so I have to become okay with reaching out to a micro audience with micro content, maybe repeatedly throughout the time on repeat. And Kristin, to your point also, how do I also cycle back through to take them from level 1 to level 2, thinking about this, to level 3? So I think that on-demand goal, I'll call it, because I don't feel like it's a reality yet. An on-demand goal is where I want to go. And I want that because I want the training or PL to be as close to implementation as possible. I really don't want you to have to run to the copier 10 times between when we talk about it and when you implement it, because 100 things will happen to you, right? So I'm looking for, how do I help manage the new time frame I have available to me for professional learning and or training?
Yeah, I love that viewpoint. And I'm very interested in that viewpoint, because I think that's not just happening on the teacher level, it's happening in K-12 itself, right? Like all student learning needs to be personalized. I mean, we're driving for equity, right? Mm-hmm. All right, so I know your brain is just bursting, Lemma. What are your thoughts?
Oh my gosh, I jotted down so many great notes that Kristin and Penny already made, but I just want to take us back a little bit. I want to take us back to what were we calling it before? PC, pre-COVID. And I want to point out that, at least, and ladies, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as I know, we were actually struggling with teacher training and technology in the classroom and ample professional development opportunity that, as Kristin so rightly pointed out, was relevant before COVID happened. And then COVID happened and everything just went like insane. And the reason I bring that up is because so many of the things that both Kristin and Penny brought up were existing problems that were exacerbated by the need to go completely digital, or in many cases, completely digital, where educators were just unprepared for that. If you think back 15 years, an educator had a textbook, maybe they had a CD-ROM that accompanied it that they might use for activities, and they were good to go. They were off to the races. And as K-12 has evolved and textbooks were slowly becoming less and less used in favor for more adaptable technology, customizable content to level for students, to support differentiated learning, et cetera, it really, the training for that and the adoption of that was not cohestent. That is a new word. Consistent. That was a merge of cohesive and consistent, if you all wanted to know that. It has not been consistent across the board. And so then enter COVID, and these educators, they got to learn Zoom or Google Meet or both. They got to be more involved in their learning management system, of which they're in one district, they can be using Schoology and Google Classroom and something else. They have to learn about how to search for their own content, where they can customize it, how they can merge the pieces together. And, you know, to Kristin, again, your point, and Penny, your point, it's not a sit and get, right? You just sit down for a day and you've figured it out. And to Penny's point, you know, you can't be do something and then have to go print something off and then come back and do something else and print something off. So what really strikes me about the way professional development and professional learning has to go on for the future is both on demand in terms of an educator being able to get the professional support that they need when they need it or on their schedule, and then on point of need, meaning that oftentimes, you know, educators spend time preparing for their lessons. They spend time learning the technology. They get instances where the technology fails. I mean, if folks were on a little earlier, you heard us all trying to figure out how to make sure we could all share our videos. That's, you know, that's point of need. I need to know what I need to do to enable someone else to share their video. And then of course, for an educator who's teaching 5, 6 classes a day with 30 students per class, with 30 sets of different needs, et cetera, multiply that by all that math is too much for me to do live in public. And the need becomes really, really acute. And that is what is so important for partners like Gale or others in the industry to take into consideration when they're building solutions, when we're releasing updates, even if we're making it better. We have to be able to provide some of that training and support throughout. And that's, again, you know, one of the great things about Gale and about what we do is we provide that point of interaction support via tutorials, via one-sheets, via a lot of different methodologies to make that transition easier for teachers. They got enough on their minds than having to figure out, you know, which button, if I click this button, what will it do? It needs to be immediately transparent to them how using this product, the tool, the service will solve their problem. And their problem always, always comes back to how can I teach my student the things they need to learn today? And how can I use these things that the school or the district or whomever has purchased for me, or I've gone out and purchased myself, because we all know that teachers do a lot of their own purchasing and self-funding. How can I use that to meet my students' needs, help them succeed, and prepare them for the next thing, whether that's the next day, the next grade, their graduation, etc. So I get getting the tingles. This is an area I'm really passionate about, and taking the approach that Kristin and Penny are taking, and so many districts are taking, moving away from the day-long sit and gets, the day-long in-services in favor of more fluid, more technology-based, more PLCs, more collaboration, working in partnership. That's where professional learning and development needs to go in K-12. And I think we're on the right track. Maybe if there's folks in the audience that want to comment, are we not, or is it wishful thinking? I think we're on the right track. I just think it's going to take some more time to get there. This is an enormous amount of change that we're undergoing, and we should give ourselves, educators and others alike, we should give ourselves the grace to get through it. It's a lot, and it's a lot for our students too.
I totally agree with all that. There, you know, but like my friend in Oregon, from one of their service units said, there's human inertia. It's going to take time. You can't drag everybody by the hair immediately in one direction. It just doesn't work. So fantastic comments. I love this idea of full flexibility, full adaptability, but I also love the idea of letting it also be human where it really needs to be truly human. Because that's what we're hearing on our national surveys is when we ask teachers, and I'm sorry I don't have a slide for this, how do you want your PD? They said, Penny and Kristin, they want the micro learning, right? But the number one thing they wanted was human workshops. Those other things were secondary. And I almost think there's a little flavor of that that's post-pandemic-ish. You know, we miss each other. And maybe so that's maybe a statistic that isn't 100% true all the time because of the conditions, but I think we're in a weird world of trying to be everything. And so I'm going to lean on you guys for next advice, but I'm going to frame this question of like how not to be everything, but also, this fall we've had a lot of regional events that we went live in again. So I got to see people for real in Texas and Florida and Indianapolis and one other place Atlanta. But we found that what's really been disrupted is that foundation, like Lemma was just talking about, of coming out of textbook days and then being thrown in to build everything all yourself was wild. Like, it's not really doable because they're not trained instructional designers. At least 90% of them that I know as teachers love them all, but they're not really instructional designers. And the thing is, digital design is totally different. You have to have good navigation. You can't be given instructions like go here, then go into this system, then back out of this one, and then go log in over there, and then do this, and then people just whoosh, right? That's not going to happen. Come on. So we've advised that there is a little bit of prescriptiveness to high grade courseware, rather than everybody make a bunch of PDFs and link to NASA kind of stuff, right? So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, because you guys have to be mixologists of PD content, what's on the curriculum map, pacing.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Kristin, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, and, I was in the classroom for 8 years and then doing what I'm doing, working with teachers every day and students every day, that the word prescriptive does kind of sends, chills down my spine. I'm like,
well, yeah,
it just has that feeling of, I don't know, the traditional guidelines and and I was a teacher who I felt very confined by textbooks, And so when planning and things like that, you want your resources to be current and relevant to the students because you're going to get more engagement and things like that. But there is something to obviously be said for some of that, the necessary continuity and consistency. And that really is curating resources aligned to standards, maintaining the pacing of the other grade level teachers, but to not be confined by that is extremely important when we are looking at educating students and preparing them for their future. When we take it from a student standpoint, right, we know we're preparing them for jobs that don't even exist yet. So with that, there has to be profound flexibility. And I think that, if we stick to our standards and we maintain pacing, it can still offer choice, inquiry, experiential learning. And that's going to meet the needs of those students. And it's going to teach them how to think. It's going to teach them how to think critically, which is so important for their future, right? Education and jobs right now are always changing, always adapting. So we've got to be able to make sure we're truly preparing the students for that.
Yeah, and I love that you stated it that way, because there is a struggle. And I can't wait till Penny also comments on this, but I'm going to ask you to say one more, comment back on to me. The struggle you just displayed between trying to be prescriptive is obviously founded in what we used to have with the textbook world, where the district could say all 6th graders get this math textbook. So then they could predict when they look down from above with the statistics, they could say, is it the teacher? Is it the student? Is it, what's happening? Because the content has got some continuity. Now in the digital realm, this is becoming more and more evident that you can't get analytics out in order to truly personalize unless there is some continuity of operation and content. But so let's say there's a baseline. Around that is the art of how you humanize and actually use the data that's coming out of it, both as an individual teacher and as an institution. And there has to be that, you know what, I'm going to shove this down to only 20 minutes as a piece of courseware, and I'm going to fluff all around it with this because I have this, maybe, as you know, some social emotional issues in my classroom, where I have 4 language students, but I need to be able to adapt. So I'm agreeing, but then I'm also saying, I see the struggle. Is there anything else you want to say about that? Because this is a really interesting, I think, critical point for continuity of operations. And it's a scary one for teachers too. Kristin?
Yeah, I mean, I think we definitely need to be able to measure growth. Personalizing learning experiences, though, building skills in inquiry and problem solving, that there's, I am very passionate about the idea of digital agility, right? So making sure that students can read and they can create across various platforms, I think is super important. Whether it's print, digital text, images, video, AR, VR, it's super important to expose our students to that. And I do believe, though, that measuring growth, I feel like personalizing learning experiences and building those skills in problem solving and this digital agility is going to improve student outcomes, and they will be able to show that growth and achievement on, regardless of the assessment. I really do, think that, and that's going to prepare them for their futures, way more than sticking to that prescriptive textbook that doesn't allow for that variety in learning.
Yeah, agree. All right, so Dr. Christensen, your thoughts on this whole area of discussion, because this is a point that is interesting.
And how many people are thinking this, and maybe we're putting just some vocabulary around it, because I think we're all grappling with this right now. And the way I like to describe it is, we make rules so we can make exceptions. That's what K-12 does, right? So when developing content, why would we be any different? I encourage people who are either fully online, and that's a small portion of the folks I work with, or blended, to look at things like what our state puts out. Georgia Virtual Learning puts out some very nice, what I refer to as skinny courses. To me, if you can align a unit with learning targets and assessments, if you can tell me what are the 5 big ideas when you teach 5th grade ELA, because nobody fails at that who's taught 5th grade ELA, by the way. But if I start with, can you give me 180 days of what you're going to do in 5th grade ELA, man, I bet the failure rate on that is wild, right? You don't expect people to start granular and go to the big ideas. I think you start with the big ideas. I think you establish that core of any course content for whatever duration, a semester, a year-long course for this month. And then I think you let what you guys spoke of as the artistry of teaching. Is it enrichment? Is it practice? Is it extension? Is it, remediation? You would let the teacher paint those branches and leaves on that tree trunk that we're all doing in 5th grade. I think that's the spirit of it. Does it look the same in every grade level or content? No way. I mean, that'd be too easy, right? But I think that the structure of how people put that out there is so important and so crucial. And I just want to encourage the audience to remember, we've inherited many things from higher ed. We inherited the learning management system. We inherited databases. Like, we've inherited ways to teach hybrid, blended, online, really from higher ed. But no one came as an instructional designer from higher ed and started working at my district. And you're going to have rock star teachers who aren't instructional designers, and we've got to get okay with that. We've got to let somebody build a 5th grade ELA core course, and then allow our teachers who are excellent teachers to just thrive and build on that.
Yeah, see, that's I think that's running it right down the path it needs without falling off to either sort of side of like that's wrong, right? There's a really fine tuning thing that has to go on here between the use of technology that, yes, fantastic analytics and graphics and animations and things whizzing around on the screen and big fat buttons for little fat fingers. There's a lot of artistry to the digital navigation to find and understand knowledge that is unbelievable. right? It's like fantastic, and it's like part of their world. And then there's the artistry of human connection and seeing some kid go, they're not getting it, and unraveling that mind so it moves forward. That is the thing that I think it's the challenge for the next 10, 15, 20 years to figure this part out. What is the weave between these things? So there's been some comments on here. I don't know I know Lemma's chomping at the bit, so I'm going to have you discuss what we just discussed, and then maybe we'll call on some of our attendees because they've made some awesome comments.
Oh, I love the sound of that. I'm just going to agree 100% with Penny, and I love your tree analogy. I don't think our schools and our administrative want prescriptiveness, but they do want to provide a baseline for educators to use that is equitable for all the educators in their system, that then those educators then have the freedom and capacity and ability to make those adjustments that you spoke of, that both LeiLani and Penny and Kristin spoke of, where you need to adjust the curriculum up a bit because your student's overperforming and you want to challenge them, or down a bit because they're struggling, or out laterally because they're interested in really diving in deeper into a particular area. And that's what we see at Gale. We work with districts across the country, and that's where things are trending to. Can you give us something that provides a baseline for our district to use to build curriculum out? And then can you provide the tools, the capacity, the technology, the ability for customization to occur in a classroom by classroom basis as needed, so that our students then, again, let's remember, we're doing all of this for the students, so that our students benefit from those investments that we make, the training that we provide to the educators, and the materials that we drive into the classroom. And so the tree works perfectly. It's the trunk and then the branches.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's an awesome analogy. And what I want to also ask you before I maybe call on some of these attendees to sort of share their viewpoint is, in my perspective, being a coder myself and running developers, right? I look at that flexibility of the artistry on the digital side as being majestically more than a flat textbook. And my worry on this whole theme of reducing teacher workload is that we've allowed way too many teachers to go, I can make my own PDF. I can scan in this coffee stained page out of this old textbook as part of it. Then I can make a video and I can do this and blah, 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 blah. And it's been like me. And the pressure's on me. And then I got to not only build, I got to distribute, I got to make all the, assessments as I go. And then I got to grade them all. And then like, I'm overwhelmed, right? So I think maybe a large part of what's going on right now is that uber flexibility that is actually inherent in digital courseware, which is not really a book, right? It's not a textbook. It's something else. And it's not understood well enough for what it's going to take off you as a teacher. And it's not like going to come in here and take over your job. It's going to allow you to be that zero in direct instructioner more. So you know what you built, Lemma. So what are your comments on that? Because this is, I think I'm trying to get to reducing teacher workload too, but have that uber flexibility like Kristin and Penny talked about. So what are your specific thoughts on that?
So I agree with you. And I think, whether the crux of your curriculum is a textbook that's augmented with other things, digital or print, it's the augmentation and the ability to build a more robust curriculum that matters. What we do at Gale is, I would not say is a textbook as an online textbook. When you say online textbook, it creates an immediate picture in an educator's mind. It's probably creating a picture in Kristin and Penny's minds right now. And that's not what we do necessarily. But Gale has an enormous amount of digital content that is aligned to the curriculum. And that digital content is in the form of text, informational text that has supplied textbook material. It's video, it's audio, it's simulation, it's interactive, it's all these things, primary sources, all these things. And so that corpus of materials is that tree trunk that Penny spoke of. And then the technology, what did you call them? LeiLani, you had a specific word for the technology that surrounds the design elements that surround the content.
The UI UX, the user interface, user experience. It's the navigation.
To make it sing for the student, because it does this, or you're able to combine these two things to create this thing. That is what Gale can bring to the table, and the reason we built it that way is exactly because of what Penny and Kristin are talking about. The need for something really foundational that has the capacity to be adjusted for a student at point of need. And I think districts are in lots of different places. Some still have print textbooks, some don't. Some have digital textbooks, some don't. Kristin, if you'll permit me to share it, when you were looking at Gale as a solution, it was just pre-COVID, it was in the October, November, and you were already as a district moving away from a textbook to support social studies for middle school and high school. And that was what drove you to seek out other online materials that could be used in lieu of the textbook, provide that foundation, and as well as provide the ability for your instructors to customize and collaborate and build at will. That's how we've interpreted it, LeiLani, and we feel really good about it, and we hope that and have evidence that it's working for schools and districts, and just want to see it grow and expand and continue to provide that content for students.
And
Lemma. That's excellent. Well, that speaks to the fact that you know your market, right? You know K-12. You're not trying to just go like, let's just bypass the whole thing and go straight to the consumer, which is what a lot of companies have done, right? And that consumer space has just exploded with growth.
And you've been listening to educators. Educators need that UX. I feel like Gale's been listening to educators, and building what they need.
And often you'll notice educators, we've been doing the same thing for generations. We don't often know what we need until we see it. So maybe a good lens for people who don't have access to something like a totally tricked out UX UI yet is to ask them to think about, like, if they're creating stuff, what's that student's experience? Does he have to do something different in your ELA class than when he comes to my science class? Or what's that family's experience, middle school versus elementary? And if you get a teacher's heartstrings, well, gosh, that's the whole shebang right there. They're totally open to that now, and they'll recognize something with a good UX, or they'll ask questions that help them develop something with a good UX.
Very great point. Love it. All right, so I'm going to ask Doug, who's on to assist. Can we unmute Emiliano? Hi, Emiliano. You made some comments on here. What else would you like to comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. I just wanted to comment that, of course, this year has been very rough. Not only, as you were commenting, and I wanted to echo on this, that it put us in a lot of challenge as to, especially in world languages, because I teach Spanish. It just put us in a lot of challenge on how to teach it, because not only am I using, Google Classroom, which some of you mentioned, and I think it's a great platform. Also, I have been using Zoom. I've been teaching Spanish for the last 5 years for Prince George's County public school system, and I have been teaching for the last 10 years in the university in the Prince George Community College. And I taught in different environments because the students are different. The priorities are different, the approaches are different. But I think, in my perspective, what works best is probably a combination between textbooks and technology. while parents may be willing to share the textbooks and to have their sons or daughters use their textbooks, I think technology works, but at the same time, when teaching a foreign language, I think it's more interaction in the classroom, one-to-one. Of course, the pandemic has limited us with a virtual phenomenon, but we should go back to the basics, because not all the students have technology. They do not have access, all of them, to technology. I heard cases of students who do not even have internet access in their houses, in their household. So, textbooks or teacher support after hours to students, like, for example, even for phone conversations or tutoring after hours, I think those are strategies or methodologies, to put it this way, that will work. But of course, not all the students will be motivated to accepting those solutions.
Right. Good comments. Thank you so much for that. Where are you at, Emiliano?
I'm in the state of Maryland. I live in Montgomery County. I reside in Montgomery County, but I work in Prince George's County.
Okay.
And while my mission is to motivate the students, and of course, I teach native speakers, and I also teach international baccalaureate. I teach IB.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much for your comments.
Thank you. Thank you a lot for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Doug, let me know if there's anyone else we want to try to unmute. But I want to go on to one final thing in the few minutes that we have left, and that is, there's personalization. And Lemma, can you kick us off on this whole conversation? Because this is another deeper aspect to this.
The personalization of materials? Yeah, absolutely. I think that personalization can come in many forms, whether it's, a single piece of content or a single instructional tool being used in different ways, or whether it's, a tweak to the lesson plan or the materials that are being used to support students at differing comprehension levels. So when we talk about personalization, it's such a broad category. You hear the phrase, you've got to be able to personalize the curriculum.
Yeah.
What does that mean? It means tailoring it to the students' needs, right? That's what that translates to. And I've been saying this all day, and I hope I'm not broken recording it, but everything we're doing is in support of driving student comprehension, behavior, and outcomes. And so when we think of the term personalization, what we're really asking ourselves is, how do I use this thing with this student? What do I have to do to it to make it work for them, for this subject, for this grade level? Do I have to give them something different? Do they need an article to read versus a video to watch? Do they need to listen to something because they're auditory learners? Do they need it translated because their native language is not English? So those are the things I think of when I think of personalization. I will freely admit I have never spent any time educating K-12 students in the classroom. Did a brief stint in college lab assisting, which is not the same. I believe Penny and Kristin will have a lot more really specific ideas about how they go about personalization. And I'm keen to hear that, because we listen to those needs, and we try to support them by asking, what does that mean to you? How will it work? What makes it successful in your school or classroom or district?
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. So, Kristin, what are your comments on, the drive towards personalization? What are you doing?
Well, I think it drives everything we do in terms of, just thinking of the devices that are in our students' hands right now, whether they're Chromebooks or iPads, and the accessibility features that are built into those, it was very thoughtful in terms of what devices we had to make sure that the learning could be personalized, just device-wise. Same with the, resources that are used in the classroom. Our classrooms, as you guys know, we have students who struggle, we have students that are gifted, they're all together in the classes. And so making sure that students have choice, and are all held to the expectations, but are, you know, they're met where they are, and are expected to show growth, you know, based on their own abilities. And like I'm thinking of just one example of, you know, a class that I taught this week, and just personalizing learning with that choice of, you know, there was a sixth grade class that we were working with, and they were essentially designing their own country. And so they were able to use different platforms for research and learn about government, learn about economics, all of the different pieces and parts of building a country, essentially, that they're going to be doing throughout these next couple months. But it's their own country. There's that personal experience, which brings with it so much more engagement. And so there's that aspect as well to it. So it does it. I feel like it goes, it's woven into every single thing that we do. And when we're looking at digital content and strengthening digital curriculum too, you know, you have to go back and you have to look at the why. Why are we trying to incorporate digital text? Why don't we stay with the textbook? I think it's because this digital content lends itself to so much more personalization, so much more, you know, it can reach students in different ways, because we have learners who do want audio. They're more auditory learners, right? They're visual, they adapt to video. It's even just like our teacher training, you know, a lot of times we'll do screencasts for them, and we will also have a document that has screenshots and step-by-step directions. And, you know, you adapt the way that you adapt, knowing that your learners excel in different ways, and you want them to go deeper, right? Rather than just substituting that technology for a digital worksheet that could be done on paper. You want to go deeper. You know, I think of that, it's that Sammer model of the swimming pool, right? You want to go deeper with the learning, and that is why you incorporate the technology and those digital resources, because it can elevate it and personalize the learning.
I love that you said that way. I've never heard it said that way, and I love it. All right. Okay. So Penny, what are your thoughts?
I noted that Sasha in the chat gave a shout out to UDL, and I think that you're right that one of the ways that we can build content well the first time is to build for accessibility. Thinking of like web content accessibility guidelines is honestly something a little bit new for some K-12 educators. Establishing that why early. It's not just about students with documented disabilities, but students with preferences. So thanks, Sasha. I hadn't thought to mention that until you mentioned that. But I'm also thinking too, what was personalized for these teachers? And Kristin gave a great example. When she provides training, she does it this way, and then another way, and she gives them a choice, because it's easier for her to do it twice than them to never take the training at all. And I think we have to model that for teachers, allow them to experience it whichever way or ways they care to. And then that's a feeling. And if they like that feeling, they want that feeling for their students. And sometimes from the periphery, not from the front of the class. I think that's the most powerful thing we have to offer for showing personalization, helping them feel what it feels like when it's personalized for them.
Yeah, excellent comment. Well, this has been really super fun. We have just a couple more minutes, so I would love for each of you guys to just share, unless Doug says there's questions coming up. Please, everyone, if you want to ping us with a comment or a question, do so now. I want to go back to, like, what is your hope for the future? Or maybe you could also answer what was your favorite new epiphany over this last dreaded period that sort of has been good for you. Like, Lemma, I'm going to have you go first.
my epiphany over the dreaded period that's COVID.
Isn't that a weird way to ask that question? Sorry.
Oh gosh. I think my epiphany is just how flexible and graceful we need to be to each other and our communities. Everyone is carrying their own loads, their own things they need to deal with, their own obstacles they need to overcome. And in particular, when we think about K-12 and everyone who's involved in the educational system, whether they're parents at home who are struggling, or teachers in the classroom, or administrators like Kristin and Penny who are just trying to figure something out and help, we need to extend that flexibility and grace to each other and recognize that we are a community that is much stronger, much smarter, and much more successful when we collaborate and partner. And I don't think I understood that. I understood that enough before COVID, but really post-COVID and, working from home, educating my kids from home, all of the different challenges that have come, it's just been much, much, much more apparent to me how important those good partnerships are.
Yeah.
So that's my takeaway.
Yeah, I love that. What a strange thing that we've had a flood of technology come in and we are more human than ever. It's a beautiful thing. All right, Kristin.
I echo what Lemma said too. I mean, granting ourselves as educators grace during these unprecedented times has been so important, and teachers have been doing that. They've, there has been this whole last year, while we're trying to just be flexible and not necessarily knowing what's going to happen day to day, and thinking about the social emotional wellness of their students. Maybe if they make time, the wellness of themselves, right? And I've seen though teachers kind of almost take that deep breath and be reminded to take that deep breath and do the best that they can and realize, the most important thing is building those relationships with those students. And so I feel like it has kind of recentered and grounded a lot of us in that sense. And it's also, I feel like, reminded us to, when taking on especially a lot of this new technology and wanting to revamp things, and if there are new platforms that are introduced with teachers, which in the past year there have been a lot, teachers know that, okay, we can start small. Right? We can start small. Maybe there's a lesson, maybe there's a unit, maybe it's a standard that we want to strengthen, and working together with their fellow educators to do just that has been phenomenal to see, I feel like.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. One of the bright sides of it. All right. Yeah. So Penny, you're the wrap-up batter. So
oh boy, no pressure.
Yeah.
I'd say this is my great grandmother was a teacher in a one-room schoolhouse, and not much had changed from when she taught to when I taught until now. And we are in an emotional high and low at the same time because everything's so transparent. Everyone can see how superhuman teachers are. And yet, like you guys said, we're so fragile at that point too because of that transparency. Mm-hmm. And things will change. We don't know all the things that will change, but one of the things I predict is that we're going to distribute our work differently, because if we don't, we won't come back. And so we have to think about strategically how to empower people to do that before they choose another career or, shrink into themselves and not be everything as awesome as they have been. And we might not know what that real change is until the end, but just remember, we're as awesome as we look right now, we're so fragile too. And we don't have to have all the answers right now. We just have to know it's a change and we have to be open to it.
Yes, I totally agree with that. You said that excellently. All of you guys did. It's been a wonderful hour with all of you. Final comment, Lemma.
I just want to thank everyone for participating today. Again, your time is precious, and we appreciate you spending it with us. I believe LeiLani is going to send out the recording.
Yes.
Gale also has some additional material, best practices that we're releasing in an insights brief in the very near future. So when you get an email from Gale, open it up. It's there to help you, not distract you. So thank you everyone for your time today, and my wonderful co-presenters and our fabulous hosts, LeiLani and Doug.
Yeah, thank you guys very much. Kristen, awesome. Keep up the great work and spirit, and Penny, you as well. And Lemma, thank you so much. All right.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's bye for now. You're free to move about again. And thank you for joining. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.